Welcome to the 20th season of the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel includes Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com. Between them, they've covered Penn State football for 70 years. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ Sports Director Alex Colley, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by IRWIN Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm, and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By MONARCH Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solani provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State! By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Lakeview Sheds and Vinyl in East Freedom. You can buy off our lot or we can customize your dream shed. By Shields Awards and the Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you can get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
Welcome to the NitWits. We are joined by the usual suspects, Neil Rudell, the Altoona Mirror, FightOnState.com's Mark Brennan. Joining us for the second time this season, former Penn State quarterback Wally Richardson, the guest chair. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, we're diving right in. Michigan State kicked the game-winning field goal as time expires, topping Penn State 27-24. Plenty to talk about, so what's your immediate takeaways?
Well, my first one is, and then you can start. I had nothing to do with this dress code. You showing up in that outfit, it's just a karma that I'm not sure I'm comfortable with.
It's kind of, the weather has impacted all of us in some strange and mystical way.
Yeah. You know, I felt about a month ago, I wasn't sure if Penn State was overrated or underrated, even though they were climbing the charts. I think we've kind of gotten our answer to a point. You know, but they're a couple plays away from being undefeated. But as I look at the whole picture, it's just troubling that there's not, a consistent running game, and I think now their defense is really taking its lumps. So, hey, they gotta climb back and have a strong finish to the season. But Michigan State was well earned. A lot of respect for their program.
Yeah, last week I said I thought the better team won in terms of talent, especially in the trenches. I thought Ohio State was just more well established. That wasn't the case this week. The most disappointing thing to me is that the exact same problems that plagued Penn State against Ohio State surfaced again against Michigan State. And Michigan State is not as good of a program, regardless of what happened to Ohio State with Iowa. Michigan State does not have that level of talent. And so the disappointing part to me is that you have two straight games where the inability to get to the quarterback makes that quarterback look like the next Heisman winner, and the inability of your own offensive line to do anything for arguably the best running back in college football doesn't allow him to do anything. So you have that happen 2 straight weeks. At some point you start to wonder, hey, they better start pushing some other buttons here. I think it's fair to be more critical of the coaching staff at this point.
Yeah, just didn't seem to have the juice yesterday. I think we made some mistakes and turned the ball over a few times. We hadn't had that problem for the majority of the year. And that 3.5-hour delay didn't help anybody. And when we came back from that, I don't think we just snapped back into it like we needed to. So we ended up having the result that we had.
I look at that with the defense. To me, the defense exceeded at least my expectations for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. We've talked about them not having a great player really maybe in the front 7, and now they've had a couple injuries up there. So I sort of expected the defense to struggle a little bit more this year, even their secondary. But I'm more befuddled about what's going on offense, that they cannot, counter the schemes that are being thrown at them to free Barkley. We saw Barkley even earlier this year when they would put him on the edge, and it doesn't seem like they're trying to get him wide near as much as they were. I don't understand that, and I think there's going to be probably separate conversations of what's going on with Joe Moorhead's offense. Franklin even called it them a finesse team, which was not exactly a flattering term at the end of the game.
Yeah, nobody's made more excuses for the offensive line than I have. I mean, it is a young group, but sooner or later you have to stop using that as an excuse. All of those guys outside of Will Fries, and I know Will Fries is playing a very key position, but the rest of the guys have all played a lot of football and played in some very big games. So it's to me, we can talk about schemes all you want, and you're right. There do seem to be certain plays that just aren't working. Why not give something else a try? But sooner or later, if you're going to be successful, your offensive line has to get the job done. They have the skill position players on offense to be a powerhouse offense. Your offensive line, young or not, they have to get tough and get the job done.
But is it really a young line? All those guys have started 20 games.
Did I just not say that?
No, I don't think it is.
They
that
are.
young
You
of
have a
line.
sophomore, and you have redshirt sophomores. I mean, Mann is the only real veteran player there. But what I will
Gonzalez,
say,
McGovern, these guys have all started.
I just got done
games.
saying that, didn't I? That they've played. That these guys have now played a lot of football, and the youth
Right,
is
but
no
you said
longer
they're
an
a young
excuse.
line. I don't really
They
think
are
they're
young
that
line.
young of a line.
Age-wise, they're young.
Well, compared to us.
Well, compared to you.
And okay, we're going to take a break on that note. And speaking of breaks, Penn State had a long one yesterday. We'll have more on that and much more when the NitWits return.
The NitWits are brought to you by IRWIN Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm, and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name.
We now return to the NitWits. A roundtable discussion of Penn State football.
Welcome back. Now that we've had a day to digest Penn State's game in East Lansing, is there anything not getting the attention you think it deserves?
Maybe the youth of the offensive line.
I'm just glad we're also here.
This is what happens when you lock them up for 3 hours and 22 minutes.
I don't know, what are you seeing, Wally? What can be improved here?
Well, offensively, we can't be one-dimensional. We're having to throw the ball too much right now, and the running game has to take some ownership, and the guys up front have got to move some people. Saquon's getting ball up in the backfield before he's really able to get going. So that's been an ongoing issue the last couple of weeks that we've got to get straightened out.
Okay, now that they've sort of measured themselves in these, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, and even go back to Iowa, which looks like a good win for sure now with Iowa all of a sudden with all this offense clubs Ohio State like that. I'm wondering whether they're moving forward. There's going to be somewhat of an off-season conversation with Joe Moorhead about the offense and about the fact that the run-pass option. It's worked really good up to now, but they get up to number 2 in the country, and maybe it's a different type of an opponent and a more physical opponent that you see in the Big Ten.
Well, I think a little bit more flexibility, maybe. I mean, listen, I've never coached a game in my life. But when I see Saquon Barkley taking delayed handoff after delayed handoff and being dropped for 3-4 yard losses on nearly every one, there's got to be something different. There's got to be other buttons that they could push, and I won't be surprised if we start to finally see them. But James Franklin said at his Tuesday press conference before the Michigan State game, when Corey Geiger asked him a question, hey, these are the same plays when we went 16-2 over whatever period. Well, people adjust. And you have to counterpunch. And again, I'm not sitting here saying I have the answers or that media people have the answers, but that's why the coaches make the big bucks. That's why you're making however many million, and Joe Moorhead's making what he's making. They're intelligent people on that staff, obviously.
Right. Who've lived it. Yeah.
And I do think they will make adjustments.
We all had 3 hours and 22 minutes on our hands yesterday, thanks to the extreme weather delay. How do you think that was handled from both teams and just the handling of the situation?
Well, I give Franklin credit there for not making an excuse out of that. Both teams. I mean, I did notice when Michigan State came out, it was almost like they came out for the start of the game again. They were really, really fired up. So I don't know whether Penn State was able to match quite that energy. And, I thought maybe when the stadium was drained out, it'd be an advantage to Penn State because it would be like sort of a more of a scrimmage atmosphere, what the game was at Rutgers a couple years ago in the sleet. But it really turned out. The one thing, Franklin questioned some of their mental preparation lately. He was pretty adamant about it after the game, and I don't know whether that carried over maybe through this delay and whatnot, or even entering the game.
Well, I mean, he also, and I don't want to get away from the discussion of the weather, because I don't think Penn State came out. And if you were going to make one excuse there, I'm sure Michigan State's locker room facilities are probably much more spacious and easier to get stuff, but there's nothing you can do there. I mean, we could be critical all we want. Listen, from what everybody said, Michigan State handled it as well as they possibly could in terms of trying to make Penn State players and coaches and stuff comfortable. But getting back to what you were saying, Neil, you're in a situation where after the game, he's talking a lot, I'm paraphrasing here, about how, maybe they're listening to too much of the noise. And, what was he getting at there? Is it the Heisman talk? Is it the playoff? Is it, everybody wants to hire Jomo? What is it that they have to tune out? But clearly he thought that some of that was starting to get to them.
Yeah, Wally, I wondered also, you have social media now, so it's not like a couple people, write something as when you were playing and you guys were more separate from some of the coverage, so to speak. But, the fact that you were on a high and you deal with this devastating loss at Ohio State, and you come right back and you got to play at Michigan State, two of the tougher back-to-back road games that Penn State has had to play. Do you think that was a factor?
I think it's definitely a factor. When you go to Michigan State, you're going to be in for a tough match. They're a real physical team, and the Big Ten has always been traditionally a very physical conference. So that going in. So no matter whether it's a 3-hour and 22-minute delay, everybody's dealing with the same thing, and whether Michigan State is doing their best to make us comfortable or not, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. The objective is to go out there and win the game. And as Mark mentioned, you said that Michigan State came out like it was a brand new start of the game, and for me, seeing what I saw, I don't think we had the juice that we needed to stay in there for a tough physical ball game for 60 minutes.
We heard Coach Franklin say he's going to try and eliminate the noise even more, but we can at least talk about it. How big of a hit did Saquon Barkley's Heisman hopes take? Because didn't find the end zone this time. We saw him run and saw him catch, even throw. But
he's putting together, every game there is some level of a highlight, for sure. Here was a pass. He did have a 36-yard run, but I'm not sure he's the favorite anymore. Mayfield, he's still scoring down there against Oklahoma State, threw for close to 600 yards. So, Saquon definitely needs to finish the season strong.
I thought you were going to say it, a 36-year-old offensive lineman out. I think the issue that Saquon is running into now is that the remainder of the regular season schedule isn't against marquee opponents. And that's no offense to Rutgers or Nebraska or Maryland, but none of them are playing as well as some of these other teams are. And even if he has big games, it's not going to pop the way it would have had he had a huge game against, well, he did have a big game against Ohio State, but it was special teams. So I think that's going to work against him. And I do think it's fair to start wondering now, is he one of these players who will definitely play in a bowl game, or does he have, he's going to have decisions that he has to make. Not that a bowl game would matter toward his Heisman chances, but, we're running down to the end of the season here, and I don't know how many more, huge platforms he has to play on.
All right, well, it is halftime here, but when we return, we're going to look at the positives that Penn State can build on moving forward. We'll be right back.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Monarch Cleaners for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State. By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886.
I'm former Nittany Lion Justin Karpakis, and you're watching the Nitwits.
Welcome back. If you look hard enough, there were some positives to pull from Saturday's loss. So what were your key takeaways the Nittany Lions can build off here?
What about Kirpakis with the drama there? I mean, he's like a TV star now. That was a dramatic rendering of welcome back to the Nitwits.
You know, standing offer for him to come in and join us. I've tried before. I know you have friendship
Calling
with him.
Kirpakis out right here and now.
I mean, standing offer.
Arguing with me?
Justin, yeah, come on.
No, listen,
As a guest, we'll treat you well. How about it, Wally?
It's worth it, Justin. It's worth it, buddy.
You know, when you think about positives, overall, you're seeing a team that's losing games that are close games. So they're in position to get it done. I mean, I think that's a real key. I think this whole getting over the hump on the road against ranked teams is another part of the development process. James Franklin said accurately after the game, this is still a young program, and not young, Neil, as in terms of the offensive lineman in our debate, but young in terms of they've been together 4 years. Mm-hmm. They're still working through these things. The coaches are learning. Everybody's still learning. It's part of that development that once you get over once or twice, they're going to be able to start winning these games. And at least they're in position. They're not getting blown out. You can see what Ohio State did at Iowa, you know.
Handling success. You know, and I think, you know, James Franklin hit on a lot of important points. And also, he made a negative, he made a positive out of a real negative when he chased down Koa Farmer, who was going to leave the field without shaking hands. I mean, the TV, you know, we haven't seen a Penn State coach run that fast since Joe accelerated on Dick Honey.
Explain that. He's a referee.
Yeah. Well, people know, but I think that was a good message to send not only to the current team but to the entire community of how you want the program handled. I thought that was a positive.
And one other thing to set up Wally a little bit. Listen, I talked to Koa afterward, and he could not have handled that better. He said exactly what Franklin said, is that at Penn State, you know, they were frustrated at Penn State. You're better than that. You know, you go out and you shake hands. You know, this team has come out, players have come out after very difficult losses and represented themselves and that program unbelievably. And while I just, you know, tee you up a little bit, how difficult is that? Because facing us, you can see we're arguing with each other. We don't always ask the easiest questions. To come out after a tough loss, that's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's definitely not easy. But those guys have been accountable for their actions, their play. So that speaks volumes to what they've been able to accomplish. And right after a game, 15 minutes, you're still emotionally charged, trying to gather yourself. So that's when a lot of times some things might come out that you might regret a little bit later. But those guys have done a really nice job of being responsible and being classy in what they've said.
Blake Gillikin, man, I'll tell you, I know he had a key block. That wasn't his fault against Ohio State, but he's tremendous. I mean, he had that punt out of the end zone. You know, difficult conditions. Mm-hmm. I mean, just you talk about a guy who's been just everything you could hope for from a scholarship punter and more. I thought that was a real positive. And listen, I know that the defensive line is having trouble getting home, but I see some real promise there in younger players. I mean, a Givens came in and is doing whatever he can.
Might have been his best game.
Yeah, Itor Gross-Matos was in there trying, and Simmons had a sack. I know these guys aren't perfect, but some of them are really young, and I think that you can see the future of those young pass-rushing D linemen.
You know, Amani has really emerged as a really good corner. Had a great
What's
interception.
his last name?
I don't know. You can pronounce
Or
it. You can yell at me if I pronounce it wrong. Castro Fields has played well, missed an interception. I get back to their receivers. I think their receivers have done a really, really good job. I know Tompkins missed a tough ball that could have changed the outcome or shaped that last 3-4 minutes. Blacknall, once again, we've been talking about him. Turns in a great play. Threw the ball to him, one catch, and he broke 3 tackles for a touchdown. So I think their receivers continue to play pretty well.
And Deshaun Hamilton, with the exception of that tip, he seemed to be all over the field yesterday. Well, with Ohio State losing, Big Ten picture still pretty scrambled. But if we're looking at bowl pictures, how do we see this shaking out for the Nittany Lions as far as what projection could be at this point?
Well, you have a scoop. You want to let us know?
I have no scoop. I haven't even looked at those bowl projections on.
You did that on purpose because you knew you were coming down here.
Not really. I just, you know, we were successful with me not looking at it, and we lost last week, and I still didn't look at it. So we lost again this week. Maybe I'll venture into that this week.
They're kind of projected the initial, and a lot of things can happen yet. But maybe Florida, maybe somewhere in the Citrus Bowl or the Outback Bowl against an SEC team, whether it's Auburn or LSU or maybe an ACC team.
Well, that's what you want to get at this point. I don't think it's as important where it is as the opponent you get. You want to get a quality opponent that you're playing, so you have an opportunity to go out there and really prove yourself one more time against a really, really good opponent. And again, that's no disrespect to Rutgers or Nebraska or Maryland, but simply by looking at their records, you know that they aren't the kind of team you're likely going to face in a bowl. So wherever they go, Penn State's had great turnouts and great times down in those Florida Bowls. If that's where it ends up, if you get a good SEC opponent, I think it'd be terrific for this program. Yeah,
and they're going to need that, I think, to really cap what could still be a really good year. But if they stumble these next 3 weeks or don't play well in a bowl game, then I think it maybe changes the overall perception.
And that's where Franklin is right. I mean, these last 3 games are all they should win all 3 of them. But they have to take care of business. They have to get these 2 losses behind them, focus in, because there are still things to play for. You can still end up this year on a good note, and that kind of jumpstart you going into next year. I know we're getting into the home stretch here, but take care of your business, get the job done, and things will take care of themselves at the end of the year.
We've got one last time out, but when we return, we are turning our attention to Rutgers. The Nitwits will be right back.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Lakeview Sheds and Vinyl in East Freedom. You can buy off our lot, or we can customize your dream shed. By Shields Awards and the Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you can get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
It's prediction time as the Nittany Lions return to Beaver Stadium to host Rutgers. Gentlemen, how do we see this one shaking out?
Well, I think we ought to let our guest go first, just as a change of pace.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the hospitality. I'm looking for us to get back on track this week. Homecoming weekend, a lot of alums will be in town. Rah rah, sis boom ba. So I'm saying the Nittany Lions prevail 48-17.
Well, 48-17, you're going big. Boy, I think there's a lot of frustration in the Penn State program right now, and Rutgers is the wrong place. But I don't know where all this offense is maybe going to come from. I'm going to say Penn State 38, Rutgers 9.
38-9.
Yeah.
Wow. That's Rutgers has actually played well against Maryland, but they do real well when they rush the ball. And Penn State, the one thing they've been doing well is shutting down the running game. So I'll go Penn State 42, Rutgers 16.
Did you say 42 or 42?
42-16.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Wow, you are riding me today, man.
All right.
Showed up in uniform.
I'm thinking Penn State 38-9. And that'll do it for another episode of the Nitwits. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for watching. We'll see you back here next Sunday.
The Nitwits are brought to you by IRWIN Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm, and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solani provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State! By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Lakeview Sheds and Vinyl in East Freedom. You can buy off our lot, or we can customize your dream shed. By Shields Awards and the Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By easytouse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you can get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.